A courageous leader advances on a mission, unaware of the trap that awaits him. An extraordinary horse senses imminent danger, moments before chaos ensues. Loyal allies uncover an internal betrayal as the commander faces a battle for survival. Hidden secrets and the loyalty of an unexpected ally put everything at risk in the search for the truth. The sun had barely risen over the horizon when Commander Jack Hawkins adjusted the reins of his faithful companion, Thunder. The horse softly whinnied, as if understanding the importance of the mission that lay ahead. Jack stroked Thunder's neck, feeling the special connection they shared since that day years ago, when he rescued him from a ranch where he was mistreated. "Today is an important day, friend," Jack murmured. "We're going to catch those criminals once and for all." The Texas Mounted Police had been on the trail of a smuggling gang for months, and they finally had a golden opportunity to capture them. Jack, known for his bravery and cunning, had been chosen to lead the operation on the outskirts of Austin. As they rode towards the meeting point, Jack couldn't help but remember how he had gotten here. Born in a small town in Texas, he had always dreamed of being a police officer and making a difference. His father, a respected rancher, had taught him the value of hard work and compassion for animals. Those lessons led him to join the Mounted Police, where he found his true calling. Upon arriving at the headquarters, Jack met with his team. Among them was Tom Reeves, his partner of many years and close friend. However, something in Tom's gaze unsettled Jack. Was it concern or something more? "Everyone knows the plan," Jack said firmly. "The smugglers are heading towards the Texas Hill Country. Our goal is to intercept them before they reach their hideout in the wilderness." The team nodded, mounted their horses, and set off. Jack and Thunder led the group, their movements perfectly synchronized after years of training and mutual trust. As they entered more rugged terrain, Jack noticed that Thunder was getting nervous. The horse moved his ears restlessly, as if sensing imminent danger. Jack had learned to trust his companion's instincts. "Stay alert," he warned his team. "Thunder senses something." He had barely finished speaking when the sound of gunshots broke the silence of the wilderness. The smugglers had set up an ambush. "Take cover!" Jack shouted, guiding Thunder behind a rocky formation. Chaos erupted. The officers returned fire while trying to maintain control of their frightened mounts. Jack watched in horror as one of his men fell from his horse, wounded in the shoulder. Amidst the confusion, Jack noticed a suspicious movement. One of the smugglers was trying to sneak away into the dense vegetation. Without hesitation, he spurred Thunder and launched into pursuit. The fugitive was skilled, zigzagging between trees and jumping over fallen logs. But Thunder was faster and more agile. Little by little, they were closing the distance. Suddenly, the smuggler turned and threw something on the ground. Jack barely had time to recognize the object, a smoke grenade. The explosion filled the air with a thick white fog. Momentarily blinded, Jack loosened the reins. "I trust you, friend," he whispered to Thunder. The horse, guided by his keen sense of smell and instinct, continued the pursuit without hesitation. When the smoke dissipated, they found themselves in a clearing. The smuggler was cornered against a cliff. Jack dismounted, drawing his weapon. "Surrender," he ordered. "You have nowhere to go." The man slowly raised his hands, but his eyes were moving, searching for an escape. In a sudden movement, he pulled out a knife and lunged at Jack. Thunder neighed in warning. Jack dodged the attack but tripped over a root. The smuggler took advantage of the opportunity and hit Jack on the head with a rock. The world became blurry for Jack. Through the haze of pain, he saw the smuggler approaching to deliver the final blow. But before he could do it, Thunder intervened, pushing the attacker with his body and forcing him to retreat towards the edge of the cliff. With his last strength, Jack managed to get up and handcuff the man. But the effort was too much. He felt his legs failing and the world beginning to darken. "Thunder," he murmured weakly. "Find help." The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was his faithful companion galloping back to where the rest of the team was. As darkness enveloped him, Jack couldn't know that this was just the beginning of an adventure that would test the limits of his friendship with Thunder and reveal secrets that would change their lives forever. Thunder's frantic gallop echoed through the thick Texas wilderness. The faithful horse, with his coat covered in sweat and mud, ran as if his life depended on it. In reality, it was Jack's life that hung by a thread. Meanwhile, in the clearing of the confrontation, Jack lay unconscious, his breathing growing weaker. The handcuffed smuggler watched him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Who was this police officer who had risked everything to capture him? And why did his horse seem to understand him so well? Far from there, at the Texas Mounted Police headquarters, the tension was palpable. Jack's team hadn't reported in for hours, and attempts at communication had been unsuccessful. Captain Emily Foster, an Iron Lady with years of experience, was beginning to fear the worst. "Prepare a rescue team," she ordered with a firm voice but with a hint of concern in her eyes. "Something went wrong, and we need to find them before it's too late." As the team got ready, Emily couldn't help but think about Jack. She had seen him grow in the force from an enthusiastic rookie to becoming one of her best officers. The idea of losing him made her stomach churn. Back in the wilderness, Thunder finally reached the point where the rest of the team was still engaged in a shootout with the smugglers. His appearance without a rider caused commotion among the officers. Tom Reeves, Jack's partner, was the first to react. "It's Jack's horse. Something must have happened to him." However, before they could organize a search, Thunder began to neigh and move restlessly, as if he wanted them to follow him. Tom, knowing the animal's intelligence, made a quick decision. "You, Garcia, and you, Johnson, come with me," he ordered. "The rest hold the position and wait for reinforcements. We are going to follow Thunder." The three officers mounted their horses and followed the faithful equine, which guided them with determination through the dense vegetation. Tom couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. Why had Jack moved so far from the group? And why did he feel that there was more to this mission than it appeared? As they rode, Tom remembered a conversation he had with Jack days before the operation. His friend had mentioned suspicions about a possible infiltrator in the force, someone who might be passing information to the smugglers. At that moment, Tom had dismissed the idea, but now his thoughts were interrupted when Thunder stopped abruptly in the clearing. There, lying on the ground, was Jack. "My God!" exclaimed Garcia, quickly dismounting. "He's alive but barely breathing." Tom approached his fallen friend, noticing the wound on his head and the handcuffed smuggler nearby. "Hang in there, Jack," he murmured as they began first aid. Johnson took charge of the prisoner, who seemed relieved to see other human beings. "I didn't mean to hurt him," the man babbled. "It was self-defense, I swear." Tom, however, wasn't paying attention to the criminal's excuses. His mind was working at full speed. If there was a traitor in the force, Jack's life could be in danger, even in the hospital. They needed to act cautiously. "Garcia, use the emergency radio and request a medical helicopter," he ordered. "Johnson, you and I will stay here to protect Jack and the prisoner." As they waited for rescue, Tom couldn't help but notice how Thunder stayed close to Jack, like a silent guardian. The bond between the officer and his horse was something that had always amazed him, and at that moment gave him a strange sense of hope. The distant sound of helicopter blades broke the silence of the wilderness. Help was on the way, but Tom knew this was just the beginning. Questions piled up in his mind. Who had set up the ambush? How did the smugglers know they were coming? And most importantly, who in the force could be working for the enemy? As the helicopter descended in a nearby clearing, Tom made a decision. He would keep his suspicions to himself for now. He would watch, wait, and above all protect his friend. The medical team quickly reached the clearing, urgently attending to Jack. They lifted him onto a stretcher, preparing him for transport. Tom approached Thunder, stroking his neck. "You've done well, friend," he said softly. "Now I need you to come with us. Jack will need you more than ever." To everyone's surprise, they managed to accommodate Thunder in the helicopter along with Jack's stretcher. The horse remained incredibly calm during the flight, his eyes fixed on his unconscious owner. As the helicopter rose above the dense Texas wilderness, Tom looked out the window, observing how the endless green stretched out below them. Somewhere down there, he thought, lay the answers to this mystery, and he was determined to find them for Jack's sake and for the entire force. What Tom didn't know was that the events of that day had set in motion a chain of events that would shake the foundations of the Texas Mounted Police and reveal long-buried secrets. The real battle was just beginning, and the fate of Jack, Thunder, and everyone involved hung by a thread as thin as the line between loyalty and betrayal. The helicopter landed at the hospital in Austin amid controlled chaos. Doctors and nurses rushed towards the aircraft, prepared to receive the wounded commander. Tom jumped out first, helping to lower the stretcher where Jack lay, still unconscious. "Cerebral hemorrhage!" shouted one of the paramedics as they pushed the stretcher towards the emergency room. "We need a neurosurgeon immediately." Tom tried to follow them, but a nurse stopped him. "I'm sorry, officer, you can't go beyond this point. We'll do everything we can for your partner." Frustrated, Tom stayed in the waiting room, his mind a whirlwind of worries and suspicions. It was then that he remembered Thunder. The faithful horse had been left on the helipad, surrounded by confused staff who didn't know what to do with an equine at a hospital. "I'll take care of it," said Tom, heading towards the animal. Thunder seemed restless, his eyes fixed in the direction where they had taken Jack. As Tom tried to calm the horse, a familiar voice startled him. "What the hell happened out there, Reeves?" It was Captain Emily Foster, her face a mask of concern and anger. Tom took a deep breath before responding. "It was an ambush, Captain. The smugglers were waiting for us. Jack, he separated from the group chasing one of them and—" Emily raised a hand, interrupting him. "In my office now. I need a full report." Before following Emily, Tom approached a hospital security guard. "Please make sure this horse is well cared for. He's important to Commander Hawkins." The guard nodded, perplexed, as Tom walked away. In the small office that the hospital had provided to Emily, the tension was palpable. Tom recounted the events of the day, carefully omitting his suspicions about a possible traitor. Emily listened in silence, her frown deepening with each passing moment. When Tom finished, she stood up and walked to the window, her gaze lost in the bustle of the city. "There's something you're not telling me, Reeves," she finally said without turning around. Tom felt his blood run cold. "Captain, Emily turned abruptly. "Jack came to see me a week ago. He was worried, saying something didn't add up in our latest operations, that the smugglers always seemed to be one step ahead." Tom remained silent, surprised that Jack had shared his suspicions with the captain. Emily continued, "I didn't want to believe him. The idea of a traitor in our ranks. But now, after this—" Her voice broke slightly. "Captain," Tom spoke cautiously, "Jack mentioned something similar to me. I thought he was being paranoid, but after today—" Emily nodded gravely. "We need to be extremely careful, Reeves. We don't know who we can trust." As they spoke, a nurse hurriedly entered. "Excuse the interruption. Commander Hawkins is coming out of surgery. The doctor wants to speak with you." They both rushed to the intensive care unit. The neurosurgeon, a man with a tired but determined look, was waiting for them. "We've managed to control the hemorrhage," he explained, "but the brain damage is significant. Commander Hawkins is in a coma, and we can't predict when or if he'll wake up." The news fell like a weight on Tom and Emily. Jack, the man who seemed invincible, was now fighting for his life in a hospital bed. "There's something else," added the doctor, frowning. "We found traces of a strange substance in his system. We're running analyses, but it doesn't seem to be any known medication." Tom and Emily exchanged alarmed looks. Had Jack been poisoned? As they processed this new information, a commotion in the hallway caught their attention. To their amazement, they saw Thunder trotting down the corridor, followed by frantic security guards. The horse stopped in front of Jack's room, softly whinnying. The guards, panting, reached the group. We're sorry," said one. "Somehow he managed to escape from the area where we had him. It's as if he knew exactly where to go." Emily, normally strict with protocol, surprised everyone by saying, "Let him be. If he's not causing problems, let him stay." Tom watched as Thunder approached the window of Jack's room, his eyes fixed on his unconscious owner. At that moment, an idea began to form in his mind. "Captain," he said quietly, "I think we have to consider all possibilities, even those that seem impossible." Emily looked at him, intrigued. "What are you thinking, Reeves?" Tom took a breath before responding. "Jack always said that Thunder was more than just a horse, that they had a special connection. What if Thunder could help us somehow?" Emily seemed skeptical, but before she could respond, the monitors in Jack's room began to emit erratic beeps. The medical team rushed in. To everyone's amazement, Jack's vital signs stabilized as soon as Thunder softly whinnied from the hallway. The doctor came out, perplexed. "I can't explain it," he said, but his brainwaves showed a spike of activity right when that horse made a noise. Tom and Emily looked at each other, a mixture of hope and confusion on their faces. Was it possible that Thunder was the key not only to Jack's recovery, but also to unraveling the mystery that surrounded them? As night fell over Austin, Tom found himself contemplating the strange scene. A police commander in a coma, a horse that seemed to understand more than it should, and a conspiracy that threatened to destroy everything they had sworn to protect. What none of them knew was that, in the shadows of the hospital, a figure silently watched, their cold eyes assessing the situation. The game had barely begun, and the pieces were taking positions on a board much larger and more dangerous than anyone could imagine. The days following Jack's admission to the hospital passed in a haze of anxiety and frantic activity. Tom divided his time between constant vigilance of his comatose friend and the covert investigation he now conducted alongside Captain Emily Foster. Meanwhile, Thunder had become a constant presence at the hospital. Against all logic and protocol, the medical staff had allowed the horse to remain in a small patio adjacent to Jack's room. The reason was as simple as it was inexplicable. Whenever Thunder was nearby, Jack's vital signs notably improved. One afternoon, as Tom was reviewing reports in Jack's room, he noticed something strange. Thunder, who normally remained calm, began to neigh and stamp the ground with his hooves. "What's wrong, buddy?" Tom murmured, approaching the window. At that moment, Jack's monitors started emitting erratic beeps. Tom turned alarmed, just in time to see Jack's hand move slightly. "Doctor!" Tom shouted, running into the hallway. "I need a doctor here!" The medical team arrived in seconds, surrounding Jack's bed. To everyone's amazement, the commander briefly opened his eyes before sinking back into unconsciousness. "It's incredible," said the neurologist, checking the monitors. "His brain waves show activity we haven't seen since he was admitted. It's as if he's fighting to wake up." Tom looked towards the window, where Thunder was still restless. "Doctor," he said cautiously, "I know this will sound strange, but is it possible that the horse perceived something we didn't?" The doctor looked at him with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. "In medicine, we learn not to rule anything out. Animals can sometimes perceive changes that escape our senses. But this is different." As they discussed, Emily entered the room, her face a mask of concern and determination. "Reeves, I need to talk to you." "Now." Tom followed her to a small empty conference room. Emily closed the door and made sure no one could hear them before speaking. "We have a problem," she said in a low voice. "I've been investigating the backgrounds of everyone involved in the operation, and I've found something disturbing." Tom tensed. "What is it?" Emily pulled out a folder and opened it on the table. "Remember the rancher who mistreated Thunder before Jack rescued him? It turns out he has connections to the smugglers we're pursuing." Tom felt his blood run cold. "Do you think this is revenge?" "I don't know," Emily admitted. "But there's more. That rancher, Frank Wilson, disappeared 3 months ago. And guess who was the last person to see him alive?" Tom held his breath, fearing the answer. Emily slid a photograph across the table. In it, Frank Wilson was seen talking to a man Tom immediately recognized. "It can't be," he whispered. It's Robert Coleman." Robert Coleman was one of the most respected officers of the Texas Mounted Police, Jack's mentor and a close friend of the Hawkins family. "This doesn't prove anything," said Tom, although his voice betrayed his doubt. "No," Emily agreed, "but it's enough for us to keep our eyes wide open. We can't trust anyone, Reeves, not even those we think we know." As they discussed the implications of this discovery, a shout from the hallway interrupted them. They both ran towards Jack's room, where they found a chaotic scene. Jack was awake, his eyes wide open, but his gaze was lost, and he was muttering incoherent words. The doctors were trying to calm him while the machines emitted alarms. "Thunder!" Jack suddenly shouted, his voice hoarse from disuse. "Watch out for the shadow." Tom and Emily exchanged looks of confusion and concern. What did this mean? Outside, Thunder was neighing loudly, as if responding to his owner's call. A nurse hurriedly entered the room. "The horse is going crazy," he reported. "He's hitting the patio door. I think he wants to come in." In an impulse that he later wouldn't be able to explain, Tom made a decision. "Let him in." "What? You can't be serious," protested one of the doctors. But before anyone could stop him, Tom ran to the patio and opened the door. Thunder trotted into the hospital, heading straight for Jack's room. To everyone's amazement, as soon as Thunder entered the room, Jack instantly calmed down. His eyes focused and a weak smile appeared on his face. "Friend," he murmured, extending a trembling hand towards the horse. Thunder gently approached, placing his muzzle against Jack's palm. The silence that followed was almost supernatural. The doctors watched in astonishment, as Jack's vital signs completely stabilized. Tom and Emily, standing at the door, were witnessing something that defied all logical explanation. It was as if an invisible connection united Jack and Thunder, a connection that transcended the barrier between human and animal. But even in that moment of apparent miracle, Tom couldn't shake off the feeling that they were on the edge of something much bigger and more dangerous. Jack's words echoed in his mind. Watch out for the shadow. What had Jack experienced during his coma? And how did all of this connect to the mysterious disappearance of Frank Wilson and the suspicions about Robert Coleman? As night fell over the hospital, Tom knew they were barely scratching the surface of a mystery that could change everything they thought they knew about the Texas Mounted Police and their enemies. Jack's recovery in the following days was nothing short of amazing. The doctors, unable to explain the speed at which the commander was improving, attributed much of his progress to Thunder's constant presence. The bond between the man and the horse had become a topic of conversation throughout the hospital, mixing scientific curiosity with a touch of the inexplicable. A week after his awakening, Jack was strong enough to maintain coherent conversations. Tom took advantage of a moment alone with his friend to try to get answers. "Jack," he began cautiously, "what do you remember about the ambush?" The commander frowned, struggling to remember. "It's blurry. I remember the chase, the smoke, and then darkness." Tom nodded, waiting patiently. Jack continued, his voice a whisper. "But during the coma, Tom, I saw things." "Did you recognize any of those voices?" Jack closed his eyes as if the effort of remembering caused him pain. "Yes, one. It was Robert Coleman's voice." Tom held his breath. The mention of Coleman confirmed his worst suspicions. "Jack," he said gravely, "there's something you need to know. We've been investigating and—" Before he could continue, the door burst open. It was Emily, her face a mask of urgency. "Reeves, outside now," she ordered. Tom followed her to the hallway, casting an apologetic look at Jack. "What's happening?" he asked once they were alone. Emily looked around before speaking in a low voice. "I just received information Frank Wilson has been found." "Alive?" asked Tom, although he feared the answer. Emily shook her head. "Dead. In a ravine near the Mexican border. And there's more, they found documents with him. Documents that implicate high-ranking officials of the Texas Mounted Police in smuggling." Tom felt the ground moving beneath his feet. "My God, who?" "I don't know yet," Emily responded. "But whoever is behind this knows that we've found the body. We're against the clock, Reeves." As they discussed their next steps, they didn't notice the figure silently slipping down the hallway, approaching Jack's room. Inside, Jack was struggling against sleep. The medicines kept him drowsy, but a part of him resisted, as if knowing that something important was about to happen. Suddenly he felt a presence in the room. Opening his eyes with effort, he saw a familiar silhouette next to his bed. "Robert," he murmured, recognizing his former mentor. Robert Coleman leaned over him, his face a mixture of sadness and determination. "I'm sorry, Jack. I never wanted things to come to this point." Jack tried to speak, but his tongue felt heavy. He watched in horror as Coleman pulled a syringe from his pocket. "It's better this way," Coleman said softly. "No pain. No more questions." Just as the needle was about to touch Jack's arm, a deafening neigh broke the silence. Thunder, somehow, had managed to open the patio door and was now charging towards the room. Coleman, surprised, stepped back. At that moment, Tom and Emily came running in, alerted by the commotion. "Stop!" shouted Tom, drawing his weapon. What followed was a chaos of movements. Coleman tried to escape. Tom lunged after him, and Emily ran towards Jack to protect him. Thunder, in a display of almost human intelligence, stood between Coleman and the exit. Amidst the confusion, the syringe fell to the floor, breaking. The liquid it contained spilled, taking with it the evidence of what Coleman had tried to do. Finally, Tom managed to subdue Coleman. As he handcuffed him, Jack's former mentor spoke, his voice loaded with bitterness. "You don't understand. This is bigger than all of us. There are forces at play that you can't even imagine." Emily, making sure Jack was safe, approached. "You'll have plenty of time to explain it, Coleman, in jail." As they took Coleman away, Jack looked at Thunder, who had approached his bed. Stroking his faithful friend's muzzle, he murmured, "Thank you, partner. You've saved me again." Tom and Emily exchanged looks. They knew this was just the tip of the iceberg. Coleman's capture opened more questions than answers. Who else was involved? How far did the corruption in the Texas Mounted Police go? And more importantly, what role did Thunder play in all of this? The horse had demonstrated time and again that he was more than just an animal. His connection with Jack seemed to transcend the explicable. As night fell over the hospital, an air of uncertainty and danger loomed over them. They had won a battle, but the war was just beginning. And at the center of it all, a man and his horse, united by a bond that defied all logic, prepared to face what was to come. The days following Robert Coleman's capture were a whirlwind of activity. The news of the betrayal of one of the most respected officers of the Texas Mounted Police shook the foundations of the institution. Meanwhile, Jack continued his recovery in the hospital, protected 24 hours a day by trusted guards and, of course, by the ever-vigilant Thunder. One afternoon, as Tom was reviewing reports in Jack's room, he noticed that his friend seemed restless. "What's wrong?" asked Tom, putting aside the papers. Jack looked towards the window where Thunder was calmly grazing. "I've been having dreams, Tom. Or maybe memories, I'm not sure." "About what?" inquired Tom, moving his chair closer to the bed. "About the day I rescued Thunder," Jack responded, his voice loaded with emotion. "There's something I overlooked at that moment. Something important." Tom leaned forward, intrigued. "Tell me." Jack closed his eyes, as if reliving the moment. "When I arrived at Wilson's ranch, Thunder wasn't the only mistreated horse. There were others, but there was something special about them. Wilson had them in a separate stable, heavily guarded. Do you think those horses had something to do with the smuggling?" asked Tom. Jack nodded slowly. "Now I'm sure, but there's more. When I took Thunder, I saw Wilson talking to someone. I couldn't see his face clearly, but now I'm almost certain it was Coleman." Tom felt a chill run down his spine. "Why didn't you mention this before?" "Because at that moment, it didn't seem important," Jack responded with frustration. "And because I blindly trusted Coleman. I never would have imagined that he—" His voice broke, and Tom put a comforting hand on his shoulder. At that moment, Thunder raised his head and softly neighed, as if sensing his owner's distress. "There's something else," Jack continued after a moment. "When I was in a coma, I had visions. I saw Thunder guiding me through a maze of shadows, and at every corner I heard whispers, names, places, dates. I think Thunder was trying to tell me something." Tom looked at the horse with a mixture of amazement and skepticism. "Jack, I know Thunder is special, but are you suggesting that somehow he has information about the conspiracy?" Before Jack could answer, Emily entered the room, her face a mask of concern. "We have problems," she announced without preamble. "Coleman has escaped." "What? How is that possible?" exclaimed Tom, jumping to his feet. Emily shook her head with frustration. "Someone helped him from inside. This confirms our suspicions. The corruption goes beyond Coleman." Jack tried to sit up, but the pain forced him to lie back down. "We need to act fast. If Coleman is free, we're all in danger." "There's more," Emily continued. "We've discovered that the smugglers are not only trafficking drugs, they're also involved in something much more sinister, the trafficking of a rare species of horses." Jack and Tom exchanged surprised looks. "The horses in Wilson's stable," Jack murmured. Emily nodded. "Exactly. These horses possess intelligence and capabilities out of the ordinary. It's rumored that they can sense dangers before they occur, find safe routes through dangerous terrains, even communicate in ways we don't fully understand." The three instinctively looked towards Thunder, who seemed to be listening attentively to the conversation. "Thunder is one of them," Jack said with certainty. "That's why Wilson mistreated him. He was trying to break his spirit, to control him." Tom ran a hand over his face, trying to assimilate all this information. "So, are we saying that we're not only facing a network of smuggling and police corruption, but also super-intelligent horses?" "It sounds crazy, I know," said Emily. "But after everything we've seen, especially with Thunder, we can't rule anything out." Jack extended a hand towards his faithful companion, who approached the bed. "Thunder is not just a horse. He's the key to all of this. Somehow he knows how to unravel this conspiracy." Tom and Emily looked at each other, unsure of how to proceed. The situation had gone from being a standard police investigation to something that bordered on the supernatural. "What do we do now?" Tom finally asked. Jack, with renewed determination in his eyes, responded, "We need to get out of here. Go back to where it all began, Wilson's ranch, and we need to take Thunder with us." "Are you crazy?" Emily protested. "You can barely stand and Coleman is on the loose. It's too dangerous." "It's our only option," Jack insisted. "Thunder will guide us. I trust him with my life." As they discussed the pros and cons of this risky plan, none of them noticed the shadow slipping down the hallway outside the room, a figure that had heard every word and was now hurrying to inform their superiors. The race against time had begun. With Coleman free, dark secrets coming to light, and everyone's lives at stake, Jack, Tom, and Emily prepared to embark on the most dangerous mission of their lives. And at the center of it all, an extraordinary horse, bearer of secrets that could change the course of history. Night was falling over Austin when the plan was set in motion. With a mixture of cunning and desperation, Tom and Emily had managed to organize a clandestine exit from the hospital for Jack. The operation was risky, but they knew that every minute that passed put them in greater danger. Jack, still weak but determined, dressed in civilian clothes that Emily had procured. Tom watched the hallway, making sure no one interrupted them. "Are you sure about this?" Emily asked for the umpteenth time as she helped Jack to his feet. The commander nodded, his face a mask of determination. "We have no choice. Thunder is the key, and Wilson's ranch is where we'll find the answers." As if understanding the gravity of the situation, Thunder remained unusually still in the small patio, his eyes alert and attentive to every movement. Tom returned to the room. "The path is clear, it's now or never." Carefully, they helped Jack out of the room. The plan was simple but risky. They would exit through a rarely used service door where a vehicle would be waiting for them. Thunder would follow them at a safe distance, guided by Jack. As they moved stealthily through the hospital corridors, Jack couldn't help but think about how surreal the situation was. Just a few weeks ago, he was a respected commander of the Texas Mounted Police. Now he was sneaking out like a fugitive, entrusting his life to a horse and pursued by those he once considered allies. Upon reaching the service door, Tom went ahead to make sure the path was clear. Emily held Jack, who was struggling to stay on his feet. "Wait," Jack suddenly whispered. "Something's not right." Before they could react, the door burst open. In front of them, with a cold smile, stood Robert Coleman, flanked by two armed men. "Well, well," Coleman said with false joviality. "Looks like someone decided to take a night stroll." Tom reached for his weapon, but one of Coleman's men was faster, aiming directly at him. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Reeves," Coleman warned. Emily, keeping her calm, spoke. "Robert, you still have time to do the right thing. Turn yourself in and we can resolve this." Coleman let out a bitter laugh. "Resolve what, exactly? You have no idea how big this is, how deep the corruption goes. You're playing a game you can't win." Jack, gathering his strength, took a step forward. "Why, Robert? You were a good cop, a mentor. What made you betray everything you believed in?" For a moment, something akin to remorse crossed Coleman's face. "Things aren't black and white, Jack. Sometimes to survive, to protect what really matters, you have to make compromises." "Compromises?" Tom spat. "Is that what you call trafficking in innocent lives?" The tension in the air was palpable. No one dared to move, aware that the slightest gesture could trigger a tragedy. Suddenly, a powerful neigh broke the silence of the night. Thunder, somehow sensing the danger, had managed to open the patio door and was now galloping towards them at full speed. What followed was total chaos. Taking advantage of the distraction, Tom lunged at one of the armed men. Emily pushed Jack to the ground, protecting him with her body. Coleman, surprised by the horse's sudden appearance, stumbled backwards. Thunder, in a display of intelligence and loyalty that defied all logic, interposed himself between the group and their attackers, kicking and neighing fiercely. "To the car!" Emily shouted, helping Jack to his feet. Tom, having subdued one of the men, ran towards them. Coleman, recovering from the initial surprise, drew his weapon and aimed. "So you won't do it," Jack roared, throwing himself at his former mentor with a strength he didn't know he still possessed. The gunshot resonated in the night, but the bullet was lost in the air. Jack and Coleman rolled on the ground, engaged in a desperate struggle. "Jack!" Tom shouted, torn between helping his friend or securing their escape. "Go!" Jack yelled. "Find the truth." With a heavy heart, Tom helped Emily into the vehicle. Thunder, somehow understanding the situation, galloped alongside the car as they drove away from the hospital. Jack, exhausted and injured, managed to pin Coleman to the ground. "It's over, Robert," he panted. But Coleman, with an enigmatic smile, replied, "No, Jack. This is just the beginning." As police sirens approached, Jack looked in the direction his friends had fled. He knew he had done the right thing by staying behind, giving them a chance to escape. Now, the hope of unraveling the conspiracy and clearing the name of the Texas Mounted Police rested with them, and with an extraordinary horse named Thunder. In the car speeding away, Tom, Emily, and Thunder were heading into the unknown, carrying the weight of a truth yet to be discovered and the responsibility of bringing justice. The road to Wilson's Ranch was fraught with dangers, but also with answers. And with each mile they traveled, the connection between Thunder and the mystery surrounding them became more evident. The night was long and the dawn uncertain, but in the darkness a ray of hope shone, guiding them towards a destiny that would change their lives forever. Dawn found Tom, Emily, and Thunder in the outskirts of Austin, approaching Wilson's Ranch. The journey had been tense and silent, each lost in their own thoughts and concerns. Jack's absence weighed on them like a dark shadow. Emily, at the wheel, finally broke the silence. "Do you think Jack will be all right?" Tom, his gaze fixed on the horizon, took a moment to respond. "If there's anyone capable of getting out of this, it's him. But now we must focus on our mission. It's what he would want." Thunder, who was galloping alongside the vehicle with a stamina that defied all logic, softly neighed, as if wanting to confirm Tom's words. As they approached the ranch, the landscape changed. The vegetation became denser and the road more rugged. Emily had to slow down, allowing Thunder to take the lead. "It's as if he knows the way," Emily murmured, amazed by the certainty with which the horse moved. Tom nodded, remembering Jack's words about these horses' special abilities. Maybe he remembers it from when he was here, or maybe there's something else at play. Suddenly, Thunder came to an abrupt halt, his ears erect and alert. Tom and Emily exchanged worried looks. "What's happening?" Emily whispered, turning off the engine. Before Tom could answer, the sound of engines in the distance reached their ears. Someone was approaching. "Quick, off the road," Tom ordered. With skill, Emily maneuvered the vehicle into the vegetation, hiding it as best she could. Thunder, once again demonstrating his extraordinary intelligence, hid behind some dense bushes. Moments later, a caravan of 3 off-road vehicles passed by on the road. Tom and Emily held their breath, crouched in their seats. Through the tinted windows, they could make out armed silhouettes. "Smugglers," Tom murmured once the vehicles had moved away. "And they seem well equipped." Emily nodded, her face a mask of determination. "This confirms our suspicions. The ranch is still an operations center." Thunder emerged from his hiding place, softly neighing as if wanting to make sure they were okay. Tom couldn't help but smile in admiration. "You're incredible, friend," he told the horse. "What do we do now?" Emily asked. "We can't just barge into the ranch. They outnumber and outgun us." Tom reflected for a moment, his mind working at full speed. "We need to find an alternative entrance. If Thunder was here before, maybe he knows some secret path." As if perfectly understanding the situation, Thunder began to move, moving away from the main road and into the thicket. Tom and Emily, exchanging a look of amazement and determination, decided to follow him. The terrain became more difficult as they advanced. They had to abandon the vehicle and continue on foot, following Thunder through barely visible paths and steep rock formations. The heat and humidity of the Texas wilderness made the journey even more exhausting. After what seemed like an eternity, Thunder stopped in front of what appeared to be the entrance to a cave hidden by vegetation. Tom and Emily exchanged surprised looks. "Do you think this leads to the ranch?" Emily asked, panting from the effort. Tom approached the entrance, examining it carefully. "There's only one way to find out." Cautiously, they turned on their flashlights and entered the cave, with Thunder following closely behind. The tunnel was narrow and damp, with roots and stalactites hanging from the ceiling. The sound of their footsteps and Thunder's breathing were the only things breaking the sepulchral silence. After several minutes of tense walking, the tunnel began to widen. As they turned a corner, they encountered a sight that took their breath away. Before them opened a huge underground cavern, illuminated by industrial lamps. And in the center, several horses of appearance similar to Thunder, enclosed in high-security cages. "My God," Emily whispered. "It's a much bigger operation than we imagined." Tom nodded, his mind quickly processing the situation. These must be the special horses Jack was talking about. Look how they're guarded. Thunder softly neighed, as if recognizing his fellow horses. The other horses raised their heads, alert. "We have to free them," Emily said with determination. But before they could make a move, the sound of approaching voices and footsteps alerted them. Quickly, they hid behind some stacked boxes, with Thunder instinctively crouching next to them. Two armed men entered the cavern, followed by a figure that Tom and Emily instantly recognized. Frank Wilson, the supposedly dead man whose body they had found weeks ago. "Impossible," Tom murmured. "How can he be alive?" Emily signaled him to keep quiet, both listening attentively to the unfolding conversation. "The buyer will arrive tomorrow," Wilson was saying. "He wants to see a demonstration of the horse's abilities before closing the deal." One of the guards nodded. "What about the fugitive horse, the one that Cop took?" Wilson frowned. "Thunder. He was the most promising of them all. We need him back. Our contacts in the police say he might be on his way here." Tom and Emily exchanged worried looks. Their presence was already expected. "And what about Commander Hawkins?" the other guard asked. A sinister smile drew on Wilson's face. "Coleman is taking care of him. Soon, all loose ends will be tied up, permanently." As the men continued their conversation, slowly moving away, Tom, Emily, and Thunder remained hidden, their minds processing the enormity of what they had just discovered. The conspiracy was deeper and more dangerous than they had imagined, and now they knew that time was running out. With Jack in danger, a false corpse walking around, and a web of corruption that seemed endless, our heroes were facing their most difficult test. And in the midst of it all, Thunder and his mysterious fellow horses seemed to be the key to unraveling this complex puzzle. Night was falling over the Texas wilderness, bringing with it the promise of imminent dangers and revelations that would change the course of their lives forever. The darkness of the cavern seemed to close in on Tom, Emily, and Thunder as they waited, holding their breath for Wilson and his men to move away. Their hearts were pounding, aware that every second they spent there increased the risk of being discovered. Finally, when the echo of voices faded, Tom dared to whisper, "We have to act fast. Jack is in danger, and now we know that Wilson is alive and behind all this." Emily nodded, her mind working at full speed. "We need concrete evidence to dismantle this whole operation. And we have to free these horses." Thunder softly neighed, as if understanding the gravity of the situation. His intelligent eyes scanned the cavern, stopping on his caged fellow horses. Cautiously, the trio approached the cages. The horses inside seemed restless but curiously silent, as if they understood the need for stealth. "How are we going to open these cages without making noise?" Emily murmured, examining the complex locking mechanisms. Tom was about to respond when he noticed something strange. Thunder had approached one of the cages and seemed to be communicating with the horse inside. A soft neigh, a movement of ears, an exchange of glances that seemed to convey more than simple animal gestures. Suddenly, the caged horse approached the locking mechanism of its cage, and to Tom and Emily's amazement, skillfully manipulated it with its teeth and lips. With a soft click, the door opened. "Incredible," Emily whispered, mouth agape. Tom, recovering from the surprise, saw an opportunity. "Thunder, can you ask them to open the other cages?" As if perfectly understanding, Thunder moved from cage to cage, exchanging those mysterious gestures with each horse. One by one, the mechanisms yielded, freeing the equines. "Now, I understand why they're so valuable," Tom murmured. "Their intelligence is supernatural." Emily, meanwhile, had found a computer in a corner of the cavern. "Tom, look at this. I think they keep all the operation records here." Quickly, they began to copy files onto a USB drive that Emily always carried with her. Documents, photographs, financial records, a whole network of corruption and organized crime unfolded before their eyes. "This is bigger than we imagined," Tom said, reviewing the files. "There are names of politicians, businessmen, even judges, a whole network of complicity." A warning neigh from Thunder alerted them. Footsteps were approaching again. "We have to go now," Emily urged, storing the USB. But Tom hesitated, looking at the freed horses. "We can't leave them here." It was then that Thunder took control of the situation. With a neigh that almost sounded like an order, he began to guide the other horses towards the tunnel they had entered through. The equines followed him without hesitation, moving with surprising coordination and stealth. Tom and Emily looked at each other, amazed before following the improvised herd. Just as the last horse entered the tunnel, Wilson's voice resonated in the cavern. "Intruders!" "The horses are escaping!" Chaos erupted. Gunshots began to echo in the cavern, bouncing off the rocky walls. Tom and Emily ran behind the horses, ducking to avoid the bullets. The tunnel seemed endless, but finally, they saw the light of the outside. They emerged into the Texas wilderness, night having already fallen. "To the vehicle!" Tom shouted, but Emily stopped him. "No! They'll catch us if we go by road." Thunder neighed loudly as if calling them. With no other option, Tom and Emily mounted him, while the other horses dispersed into the wilderness, making pursuit difficult. What followed was a frantic race through the thicket. Thunder moved with supernatural agility and certainty, dodging trees and jumping obstacles as if he knew the terrain by heart. Behind them, they could hear the shouts and gunshots of their pursuers growing more distant. After what seemed like an eternity, Thunder slowed his pace. They had reached a clearing next to a turbulent river. The horse stopped, panting, but still alert. Tom and Emily dismounted, exhausted but exultant. They had escaped, they had the evidence, and they had freed the horses. But their joy was short-lived. "Jack," Emily suddenly said, "we have to go back for him. He's in danger." Tom nodded gravely. "Yes, but we can't just barge into the city. Coleman and his accomplices will be looking for us." It was then that Thunder began to act strangely. He approached the river and began to stamp the ground with his hoof, softly neighing. "What is he doing?" Emily asked, confused. Tom approached, watching closely. I think he's trying to tell us something." He crouched next to the horse, examining the area where he was stamping. To his surprise, he noticed that the ground sounded hollow. "Emily, help me here!" Together, they cleared away the undergrowth and dirt, revealing a hidden trapdoor. Upon opening it, they discovered a tunnel that seemed to extend under the river. "Incredible," Emily murmured. "It must be part of an ancient smuggling network." Tom looked at Thunder with renewed amazement. "You're guiding us to the city through a safe route, aren't you, friend?" The horse softly neighed as if confirming. Emily pulled out the USB, holding it as if it were the most valuable treasure in the world. "With this we can bring down the whole operation, but first, we save Jack," Tom completed. They looked at each other, determination shining in their eyes. They knew they were heading towards the heart of danger, but also towards truth and justice. Thunder positioned himself next to the tunnel entrance, ready to guide them once more. Tom and Emily, with a mixture of fear and hope, prepared for the last act of this dangerous adventure. As they entered the darkness of the tunnel, they knew that what awaited them on the other side would change their lives forever. The final battle was about to begin, and the fate of Jack, the Texas Mounted Police, and an entire network of corruption hung by a thread. The night was deep, but the dawn of truth was near, and with Thunder guiding them, they felt that nothing was impossible. The darkness of the tunnel enveloped Tom, Emily, and Thunder as they cautiously advanced. The sound of water running above their heads and the echo of their footsteps created a tense atmosphere. The USB they carried weighed like a dangerous secret, loaded with evidence that could unmask the entire network of corruption. After what seemed like an eternity, they saw a faint glow ahead. They emerged in an abandoned basement on the outskirts of Austin. Dawn was beginning to tint the sky with pink and orange hues. "We need to move fast," Tom whispered. "Jack is in danger, and we don't know how much time we have left." Emily nodded, taking out her phone. "I'll try to contact some trusted agents. We'll need backup." While Emily made discreet calls, Tom approached Thunder, stroking his neck. "You've been incredible, friend. But what's coming now? I can't ask you to risk yourself more." To his surprise, Thunder softly neighed and pushed Tom with his muzzle as if saying, "I'm with you to the end." Emily returned, her face a mixture of relief and concern. "I have good news and bad news. The good news is that Jack is alive and in custody at the Central Police Station. The bad news is that Coleman has taken control of the station, declaring that Jack is a traitor." Tom clenched his fists. "They're trying to silence him before he can talk. We need to get there now." With Thunder discreetly following them through alleys and back streets, Tom and Emily approached the police station. The building was surrounded by officers, some clearly confused by the situation. "We can't just walk in through the front door," Emily murmured. It was then that Thunder softly neighed, calling their attention. The horse looked meaningfully towards a side alley. "I think he wants us to follow him," Tom said. Trusting the extraordinary animal's instinct, they followed him. Thunder guided them to a poorly guarded service door. Skillfully, Tom forced the lock, and they entered stealthily. Inside the station, chaos reigned. Officers were arguing among themselves, some defending Jack, others believing Coleman's accusations. Taking advantage of the confusion, Tom and Emily slipped through the corridors searching for Jack. They found him in a detention cell, guarded by 2 officers who seemed uncomfortable with their task. "Tom, Emily!" Jack exclaimed upon seeing them, his voice mixed with relief and concern. Before the guards could react, Emily pulled out her badge. "Special Agent Foster, we're here on direct orders from the governor. Commander Hawkins is coming with us." The lie told with such authority worked. The guards, confused and relieved not to have to make a decision, allowed them to free Jack. "How?" Jack began, but Tom interrupted him. "No time. We have the evidence, but Coleman has control. We need to get to the communications center." As they hurried through the corridors, Jack updated them on the events at the station. Coleman had arrived with a special unit accusing Jack of corruption and conspiracy. "He has half the force deceived or threatened," Jack explained, "and the other half is too scared to act." They reached the communications center, the nerve center of the station. Inside, Coleman and his trusted men controlled the communications, spreading their version of events. "It's now or never," Emily said, holding the USB. With a coordinated movement, they burst into the room. Surprise played in their favor, allowing them to quickly subdue the few guards present. Coleman, cornered, drew his weapon. "You have no idea what you're doing. This is bigger than all of us." "We know," Jack responded, his voice firm. "That's why we're going to stop it." At that moment, a powerful neigh resonated throughout the station. Thunder, somehow, had managed to enter the building and was now galloping through the corridors, creating a perfect distraction. Taking advantage of the confusion, Emily connected the USB to the central computer. In seconds, the screens of the station and the entire Texas police network filled with incriminating documents, photographs, and records they had recovered. The truth, raw and forceful, unfolded before the eyes of all the officers. The corruption network, the names of those involved, the smuggling operations, everything was exposed. Coleman, seeing his world crumble, attempted one last desperate act. He aimed his weapon at Jack, but before he could fire, thunder appeared like lightning, knocking Coleman down with a precise charge. The chaos that followed was controlled. Loyal officers, now with the truth before their eyes, began to arrest those involved. Coleman, Wilson, and their accomplices were handcuffed and taken into custody. As the light of dawn flooded the station, Jack, Tom, and Emily walked outside, exhausted but victorious. Thunder was waiting for them, his majestic presence drawing looks of awe and respect. "I can never thank you enough, friend," Jack said, embracing his faithful companion's neck. In the days that followed, the truth came to light in all its magnitude. The corruption network was dismantled, reaching high-ranking politicians and powerful businessmen. The Texas Mounted Police began a process of purging and reform. The special horses, including Thunder, were recognized as a unique species and placed under protection. A special program was established to study their abilities and ensure their well-being. Jack, fully rehabilitated, was appointed head of a new special unit dedicated to combating corruption, with Tom and Emily as his main collaborators. Months later, in a special ceremony in the main square of Austin, Jack, Tom, and Emily were decorated for their bravery and service. But the real center of attention was Thunder, who received special recognition as Hero of Texas. As the crowd applauded, Jack approached his faithful companion. "We did it, friend," he whispered, his eyes shining with emotion. "Together we changed things." Thunder softly neighed, his intelligent eyes reflecting an understanding that went beyond words. The bond between them, forged in adversity and strengthened by loyalty, was a testimony to the power of friendship and determination. As the sun set over Texas, illuminating the sky with golden and reddish tones, Jack, Tom, Emily, and Thunder looked towards the horizon. They knew that challenges still lay ahead, but they were ready to face them. Together they had demonstrated that truth and justice, with a little help from an extraordinary horse, could triumph against all odds. And so, with Thunder by his side, Jack Hawkins and his friends prepared for their next adventure, confident that as long as they remained united, there would be no obstacle they couldn't overcome.